Words lie, behavior never does. Joe Navarro. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it, and let's get started. They'll smile, look you in the eye, say all the right words, and still be lying to your face. Not always out of malice. Often, just because it's easier that way. Lying has become normal, expected, rewarded. We lie to protect ourselves, to avoid conflict, to seem stronger than we are, to avoid shame, to control how others see us, to avoid rejection, to get what we want without showing who we are. And sometimes we lie without even noticing it. It's not just politicians or narcissists, not just toxic bosses or exes. It's almost everyone, every day, at home, at work, in therapy, even in front of the mirror. The truth is, we live in a world where most people are performing, and you're watching a show without knowing it's a show. You think you're having real conversations, but you're often just interacting with someone's defense mechanism, someone's mask, someone's unhealed wound dressed up as confidence. And the worst part, you've probably trusted people who were lying to you the whole time. You believed their tone, their eyes, their gestures, because you didn't know how to read what's underneath them. And maybe deep down, you felt something was off. But you silenced that feeling because you didn't want to seem paranoid, or difficult, or insecure. That's how it starts. You doubt yourself instead of doubting the performance in front of you. You override your instinct. You believe the surface, and you pay the price. We live in a time where knowing how to read people is no longer optional. It's essential, because if you can't read people, you're vulnerable. Emotionally, financially, psychologically, you'll keep opening your heart to the wrong ones, giving your energy to manipulators, falling for polished masks, and suffering the consequences. And the world isn't getting any simpler. It's getting more filtered, more curated, more fake. Reading people, truly reading them, is how you take your power back. Because when you see clearly, you choose wisely. You stop falling for words and start paying attention to energy. You stop reacting to what people say and start understanding what they really mean. You're not paranoid. You're just tired of being deceived. You're not too sensitive. You're just picking up on signals others ignore. And if you've been hurt, lied to, betrayed again and again, it's not because you're broken. It's because you were never taught how to read what's real. No one showed you how to see past the smile, past the nice words, past the story. But you can learn, and once you do, the world changes. You become less anxious, less confused, less emotionally hijacked by others. You become grounded, clear, unshakable. This isn't about becoming cold or suspicious. It's about becoming awake. Because the truth is, most people don't lie to hurt you. They lie to survive. But if you don't know the difference between survival mode and sincerity, you'll keep taking things personally that were never about you. This is the skill of the 21st century, to read what's behind the words, to hear the silence beneath the noise, to feel what the body reveals when the mouth hides it. And once you develop that, no one can manipulate you the same way again. Not your boss, not your partner, not your family. Because now you see, and once you see, you don't unsee. Most people walk through life assuming others mean what they say. They take words at face value. They confuse confidence with integrity. They confuse politeness with kindness. And then wonder why they keep ending up betrayed, manipulated, disappointed. You think someone is honest because they looked you in the eye, because they didn't raise their voice, because they said the right things. But none of that guarantees truth. What it usually guarantees is that the person has learned how to sound convincing, even when what they're saying is a complete fabrication. The better someone is at lying, the more calm and believable they seem. And that's exactly why the inability to read people becomes dangerous. When you can't read people, you attach to illusions. You trust stories that were designed to disarm you. You project your own honesty onto others and assume they operate from the same values. But not everyone does. In fact, most don't. People will say what you want to hear. They will reflect back your needs to earn your trust. They'll mirror your language, your fears, your hopes, and use them to build a version of themselves you'll fall for. Not because they're evil, but because it works. And unless you can see the signals behind the performance, you'll walk straight into the same trap again and again, thinking, this time it's different, only to wake up to the same emotional debt. That's why learning to read people is not just about catching liars. It's about protecting your time, your energy, your nervous system. Because when you can't tell what's real, you spend your life overthinking. You replay conversations. You question your sanity. You try to decode contradictions, justify inconsistencies. It drains you. It makes you feel broken, when in fact, you're just overloaded from trying to make sense of people who were never being fully honest in the first place. The pain isn't always in the lie itself. It's in the amount of mental gymnastics you had to perform to believe it. You don't need to become paranoid or cold, but you do need clarity. Because in this world, charm is a weapon. Words are currency, and emotions get traded for power. When you know how to read people, you stop paying those invisible costs. You stop absorbing energy that isn't yours. You stop abandoning yourself in the name of keeping peace with someone who isn't even at peace with themselves. And this skill, the ability to see people beyond their mask, becomes your emotional immunity. If you've ever looked back and thought, how did I not see it? This is your wake-up call. You did see it, but you dismissed it. Because society taught you to value harmony over intuition, taught you to be polite instead of perceptive, taught you that doubting someone's words is rude, even when their energy screams something else. That conditioning keeps you trapped. But the moment you start trusting what you feel, not just what you hear, you reclaim your power. And if this feels personal, it should. Because this isn't theory. This is survival. You've been played. You've been drained. You've been tricked by faces that smiled and voices that soothed while quietly eroding your trust in yourself. And the reason you're here is not because you're weak. It's because your soul is done falling for what looks good and is finally ready to see what's true. If these words hit something real, subscribe to the channel. More people need to hear what no one else is saying. And join the Telegram. That space is for those who've stopped pretending, for those who are ready to see. And if you recognize yourself in these words, write in the comments, I no longer believe the masks. Let's see how many of us are done living blind. People don't lie because they're bad. They lie because it works. Because somewhere along the way, they learned that being fully honest came with a cost: rejection, punishment, humiliation, abandonment. As children, we all test the waters of truth. And very early, we discover which truths are welcome and which are dangerous. A child says how they feel and gets dismissed. A teenager shows vulnerability and gets mocked. A young adult speaks their truth and loses love. So what happens? They adapt. They learn the rules. They shape themselves into something more acceptable, more likable, more useful. And that adaptation becomes the foundation of every adult interaction. So when someone lies to you, it's rarely random. It's a coping strategy, a learned behavior, a defense. They're not necessarily trying to deceive you for fun. They're trying to survive the moment, to stay in control, to avoid the feeling of powerlessness that raw honesty might trigger. The problem is, these strategies become so automatic that the person doing it often doesn't realize they're lying. They've convinced themselves. They believe their own mask. And that's where it gets dangerous, because now you're not just dealing with deception. You're dealing with someone who's disconnected from themselves, but still sounds convincing. What makes this even more complex is that many lies aren't spoken. They're lived. In the way someone avoids a topic, in the way they perform kindness but avoid intimacy, in the way they speak in polished sentences but never make eye contact when things get real. These are lies too, not verbal ones, but energetic ones. And the only way to detect them is to stop focusing on what people say and start noticing what they're avoiding. The silence behind the smile, the hesitation behind the compliment, the way their words and their presence don't align. That's why learning to read people isn't about judgment, it's about safety. Because once you understand that everyone is managing their own fears, you stop taking lies personally. But you also stop tolerating them. You stop making excuses for behavior that drains you. You stop waiting for someone to become honest when all their energy says they're not ready. You accept the truth beneath the performance and move accordingly. Reading people isn't about tricks. It's not about memorizing body language cues or becoming a human lie detector. It's about developing a deeper sensitivity to contradiction between what someone says and what their body, tone, and energy reveal. When a person is lying, even subtly, something always glitches. Their words might be smooth, but their eyes flicker, their shoulders tighten, their timing is slightly off, their smile holds a trace of tension. These are not always dramatic signs, but they're there if you're quiet enough inside to notice. Most people focus on content. They listen to the story, the facts, the logic. But truth is rarely in the words. It's in the pauses. It's in the hesitation before speaking, the microsecond delay before answering a simple question. It's in the shift of posture when a certain topic comes up. And most importantly, it's in the mismatch, when someone says they're fine, but their entire body says otherwise. The key is not just in watching others, but in learning to feel what happens in you when you're with them. Your body reacts first. Your gut tightens. Your chest closes. Your energy dips. That's not anxiety, it's data. But most people override it because they've been taught not to trust their own perception. One of the clearest signs someone isn't being truthful is overcompensation. Too many details, too much confidence, too much eye contact. Real truth is rarely that polished. People who speak from authenticity often pause, self-correct, reflect as they go. There's vulnerability in real truth, a slight messiness. When someone sounds rehearsed, precise, too perfect, chances are they're not telling you everything. And the more they try to sell you their version, the more you should step back and observe, not react. But the most powerful way to read lies isn't by watching them. It's by watching yourself. If you feel confused, foggy, drained after talking to someone, pay attention. That's not random. That's your nervous system picking up a mismatch. If something feels off, but you can't explain why, trust it anyway. Not every lie is obvious. Some are energetic, and your ability to recognize them depends on how honest you are with yourself. You don't fall for lies because you're naive. You fall for them because they feel familiar. That's the trap. You're not chasing truth. You're chasing patterns that your nervous system recognizes as home, even when that home was chaotic, unpredictable, or unsafe. If you grew up having to guess how someone feels, decode their moods, or earn their love through performance, then as an adult, you're wired to be attracted to people who make you do the same. The uncertainty feels normal. The emotional tension feels like connection. The inconsistency feels like chemistry. That's why you keep trusting people who end up hurting you. Not because you want to suffer, but because part of you believes that if you can finally win their approval, you'll heal something old. But that never works. Instead, you abandon your intuition, ignore the red flags, rationalize the dissonance, and call it love, loyalty, or hope. Meanwhile, your body knows. Your body always knows. It tenses around certain people. It gets heavy in certain conversations. It goes numb around certain truths. But because you never learn to trust that intelligence, you override it and call it empathy. Reading people isn't just about watching others. It starts with reading yourself. The clearer you become about your own patterns, the easier it is to notice them in others. If you've never faced your own fear of abandonment, you'll fall for people who trigger it. If you haven't dealt with your need to be liked, you'll trust anyone who flatters you. And if you haven't explored your own shadows, you'll be drawn to those who mirror them and call it fate. You're not seeing people as they are. You're seeing them through the lens of your unresolved pain. So the first step in reading others is becoming honest with yourself about your motives, your wounds, your longings. Because the moment you stop needing someone to be a certain way, you start seeing them clearly. And clarity is the end of self-betrayal. Learning to read people isn't about memorizing signs, it's about becoming deeply present. When you're truly present, you notice things others miss. A breath held too long, a sudden blink rate, a forced laugh, a shift in vocal tone when a subject changes. But most importantly, you notice your own reaction. Your body becomes your radar. When someone is lying, even subtly, your system picks it up. You may feel suddenly drained, irritated, distant, or just off. That's not overthinking. That's information. But to access it, you need to stop overriding your perception in favor of social harmony. One of the most powerful practices is observation without interpretation. Just watch. Don't try to label. Don't try to guess motives. Simply observe what shifts in the person and what shifts in you as the interaction unfolds. Most people are too busy performing themselves to notice others. They're trying to sound right, appear confident, be liked. That noise blocks sensitivity. So the training begins with stillness, with noticing, not fixing. The less you try to be anything, the more you see what others are trying to be, and whether that aligns with the energy in the room. Truth is rarely loud. It shows up in quiet consistencies, in congruence between tone, timing, tension, in someone's ability to stay grounded under pressure, in their willingness to say, "I don't know," without flinching. When someone is real, they're not flawless, they're coherent. When someone is false, they're not always malicious, they're fragmented. Your job isn't to judge, but to witness. And the more you do, the more accurate your instincts become. You don't need to interrogate people. You don't need to expose them. You just need to notice when something doesn't add up and trust that noticing. That's the beginning of internal authority, not reacting from fear, not seeking confirmation, just knowing, calmly, clearly, quietly. And when you live from that space, no one can shake your sense of what's true. There's one thing more dangerous than being lied to by others, and that's being lied to by your own fear. Fear doesn't scream. It whispers. It convinces you to stay small. It tells you, "Not yet," when your soul is already ready. It paints pictures of worst-case scenarios until staying stuck feels safer than growing. And the tragedy is, most people listen. Most people wait for confidence to arrive before they move, for clarity to come before they act, for permission before they live. And so they shrink. Every single day, they play it safe. They silence themselves. They make decisions not from truth, but from survival. Fear makes you betray your potential. It makes you walk away from love, from purpose, from truth, all in the name of protection. But the protection is fake. It's a prison dressed up as safety. And the longer you listen to it, the more disconnected you become. From yourself, from life, from your deepest capacity to feel, create, connect. That's why fear must not be obeyed. It must be understood. And to understand fear, you have to go where it lives. Not away from it, but toward it. The first shift is radical, but simple. Don't turn away from fear. Lean into it. That's the first practice. When something scares you, say the truth. This scares me, and I'm going to stay here anyway. Don't fight it. Don't try to overcome it with force. Just stay, observe, breathe into the discomfort. When you don't run, fear loses its power. Because fear feeds on avoidance. The more you avoid, the more it grows. The moment you stay, fully present, fully aware, it begins to dissolve. What you thought would kill you passes through you and leaves clarity in its place. The second principle is this: treat fear as your teacher, not your enemy. Every time you feel afraid, there's something sacred underneath it. You fear rejection because you long for connection. You fear failure because you care deeply about what you're creating. You fear being seen because part of you still believes you're not enough. That's not weakness, that's insight. Let fear show you what matters. Let it direct your attention to the parts of you still waiting for healing. When you stop judging fear and start listening to it, it becomes a compass, not one to be obeyed blindly, but one that reveals where your inner work is needed most. The third and most powerful practice is this: drop the storyline, stay with the energy. Fear comes with a story. They'll leave me. I'll fail. They'll laugh. I'm not ready. But the story is never the truth. It's a protective narrative. Instead of feeding the mind with more fear-based thoughts, shift into the body. Where does it live? The fear. Is it in your chest, your stomach, your throat? Just be there. Let the body feel what it's feeling, without trying to fix it. This is how fear becomes integrated. When you stay with the raw energy without following the story, something deep within begins to shift, and you become more whole, more grounded, more real. If you live your life avoiding what scares you, you'll never know who you really are. You'll just know the version of yourself that negotiated with fear at every step. But the real you, the fearless one, is born in the fire, not by being reckless, but by standing still in what you used to run from. That's where your life begins again. On the other side of the lie that fear told you, that you can't, that it's too late, that you'll never be enough. None of that is true. Fear has always lied, and it's time to stop believing it. This is not a motivational speech. This is a mirror. You know the places in you that feel frozen. You know the things you've postponed, the conversations you've avoided, the dreams you've talked yourself out of, and you know, if you're honest, that fear has been running the show. But now you have a choice, not to eliminate fear, but to stop letting it drive your life. If this hit you deep, if even a part of you feels like it's time to stop living behind the glass, then stay close. Subscribe to the channel. Let this message reach others who are still silent. join our Telegram. That's where we go even deeper, without filters. And if this video cracked something open in you, write in the comments, "I face my fear." Let's see who's ready to stop hiding. All right, fear is no longer my master. Make it your declaration, not to anyone else, to yourself. This is just the beginning. The masks are falling, the lies are exposed, and your truth, the one beneath fear, is finally ready to breathe.